It is no mean feat constructing and bringing any memorable cinematic character to life, let alone one who doesn't appear until the movie reaches its conclusion. Only appearing in a film's climactic scenes means that the actors who have been charged with embodying these characters have less time to work with, and subsequently, less time to deliver a performance worthy of note. That being said, I'm Cy for Whatculture.com, and these are the 10 best movie characters not introduced until the end. Number 10. Cade, Skyfall. In a film steeped with mystery surrounding 007's past, it makes sense that the human best served to provide insight on the man himself doesn't show up until the events immediately preceding the last showdown of 2012's blockbuster outing Skyfall. Portrayed by the late great British character actor Albert Finney, Cade is the gamekeeper of the titular childhood home of James Bond, where Bond and M choose to take a final stand against Raoul Silver. A long and secluded existence in the Scottish Highlands might have robbed many of their taste for adventure, but evidently not in Cade. The gamekeeper gleefully sets about assisting Bond in setting up a variety of delightful booby traps for the inevitable arrival of Silver's heavily armed forces. Bond's pleas to leave the fighting to him fall on deaf ears, and the old man takes part in the defence of Skyfall with his trusty shotgun. Welcome to Scotland is the last thing several of Silver's thugs hear before being dispatched by Cade, and the elderly Scotsman also helps get Emma to safety after she is wounded in the battle. Additionally, any character who invites James Bond to try and stop me, you jumped up little shit, it's a character clearly worth of further examination. Number 9. The Bride, Bride of Frankenstein. It seems bizarre that a film centering around the titular Bride of Frankenstein would only feature the would-be Mrs. Frankenstein in the final act. James Whale's 1935 outing has been critically acclaimed as one of the greatest horror films of all time, featuring Boris Karloff in his second appearance as the creature based on the monster from Mary Shelley's novel. The film seeks to explore a subplot of Shelley's original story. As no living thing will accept the monster in its current state, it demands that a mate be created for it, a request eventually obliged by Dr. Septimus Pretorius, a mentor of Henry Frankenstein. Despite being the focal point of the movie, the bride does not appear in her living form until the film's final act. It's a heartbreakingly ironic entrance as well. The horrified bride rejects Karloff's monster, leading him to destroy the laboratory with both of them still inside. Regardless of Elsa Lancaster's exceedingly brief appearance within the film, however, Bride of Frankenstein holds a proud reputation as one of the most significant and progressive horror movies of all time. The film was selected for preservation in the US National Film Registry on the basis that it was culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. None of these lofty accolades would have been possible without the contribution of the eponymous bride herself. Number 8. John Lennon, Yesterday. The most heartwarming appearance on this list is the late introduction of John Lennon in Danny Boyle's light-hearted Beatles love letter 2019's Yesterday. The film's protagonist Jack is hit by a bus in Yesterday's early going and swiftly wakes up in an alternative reality where the Beatles never made it to the big time, allowing him to shamelessly pass their music off as his own. As Yesterday winds down, John Lennon makes an appearance portrayed by the cinematic icon that is Trainspotting's Robert Carlyle. Jack meets two people who are also transferred from his original reality who thank him for keeping the Beatles' music alive and give him Lennon's address. He was never murdered in this branch of reality, enjoying a contented and peaceful existence with his wife. While clearly confused as to why this befuddled young man has shown up on his doorstep, Lennon proceeds to deliver an uplifting monologue regarding the necessity of happiness to deem one's life successful, and inspires Jack to get the love of his life back. While Yesterday arguably failed to make the most out of its unique premise, the late introduction of Carlyle's Lennon was an unquestionable high point of a charming cinematic offering. Number 7. Colonel Mackenzie, 1917. Benedict Cumberbatch has a tiny amount of screen time in Sam Mendes' epic war outing 1917, but the veteran actor makes the most of it in his usual impressive fashion. Before Cumberbatch's appearance, viewers have just sprinted full tilt through no man's land alongside Will Schofield, taking in every devastating detail of the war-torn landscape as he desperately races to deliver a message to Mackenzie telling him to call off an attack. Having witnessed this harrowing scene and the sacrifices Will had to make to get to this point, viewers are sent into a horrified frenzy when Mackenzie, eyes glinting at the prospect of what appears to be an impending glorious victory, initially refuses to believe that the orders are genuine. It's a perfect snapshot of a man so singularly focused on his end mission that he's willing to risk the lives of thousands of his men. Mackenzie's nerve-wracking case of red mist comes perilously close to causing a massacre before he ultimately sees reason and calls off the attack. A brief outing at 1917's tail end, but one so thrilling that it left viewers' hearts pounding out of their chests. Number 6. Unnamed Arkham Prisoner, The Batman. Not only is this character not introduced until the very end of Matt Reeves' neo-noir masterpiece The Batman, the fact that only his voice and silhouette are featured within the film speaks volumes to the impact he has in such a brief cameo appearance. Riddler, locked in his cell and wailing dementedly at the demise of his deviously intricate plans, finds an unexpected ally, an unseen prisoner in the cell next to him who tells him a riddle about friendship to comfort him. The identity of this soft, almost childishly voiced villain is never firmly established, but everybody knows exactly who the man is when he breaks into his trademark cackle of maniacally evil laughter. Indeed, a deleted scene from the film reveals the true extent of the malevolence housed within that cell, none other than, of course, the Joker. Barry Keoghan's cameo at the very end of The Batman, aided by the notoriety of the chilling deleted scene, means that although he is limited to what is essentially a voiceover, Keoghan's so-called unnamed Arkham prisoner is one of the more impressionable late arrivals within a film to date. Number 5. John Doe, 7. When it comes to serial killer flicks, audiences often catch a glimpse of the perpetrator in the events that lead up to their inevitable on-screen capture. Perhaps what makes Seven's John Doe so utterly terrifying, though, is the fact that the killer is never seen once until the second he walks into the police precinct covered in splatters of blood. Even better, this instance doesn't occur until 1 hour and 35 minutes into David Fincher's critically acclaimed thriller. Up until that point in proceedings, the only thing viewers had to go on were the mangled, bloodied corpses that the killer had left behind, the murders all carried out in a warped parody of one of the 7 deadly sins. The utterly horrifying nature of Doe's modus operandi, combined with his complete anonymity, made for a terrifying spectral presence looming over Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. As such, the fact that John Doe only appears for 20 minutes during the film's final act highlights what an impressionable character the chilling villain is. The vile murderer oozes twisted malevolence from every pore during his stunning performance in Seven's nail-biting climax and devastating final twist. Number 4. Harry Waters, In Bruges. Martin McDonagh's riotous dark comedy In Bruges is a manic triumph of a motion picture. Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson helm an outing that alternates between deep introspection and laugh-out-loud silliness, complemented by some of the sharpest scriptwriting and wackiest characters in recent memory. While Farrell and Gleeson take to their respective roles as Ray and Ken like ducks to water, the true star of this masterpiece only features in the final act, despite his purring tones over the phone being a constant presence throughout the movie. This, of course, is Harry Waters, played in a side-splitting performance by the legendary Ralph Fiennes. Waters appears on screen for the first time in the third act of the film with one hell of a debut line: "You're an inanimate object." In Bruges is a brilliant, surprisingly moving and unashamedly messed up film, and Fiennes proves to be the perfect villain for this underrated gem of a black comedy. Number 3. Wilford, Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer depicts a dystopian tale of survivors of an extinction event aboard a train endlessly circling the frozen wasteland that was once Earth. Chris Evans' Curtis Everett leads the lower class passengers, relegated to the subhuman conditions of the train's tail, in a bloody revolution against the wealthy occupants of the front carriages in a desperate fight to get to the front of the train. An enthralling, visceral commentary on survival and inherent human nature culminates in a standoff with the train's mastermind, Wilford, played in a sublime turn by Ed Harris. The most sinister aspect about Wilford is his relaxed matter-of-factness, chuckling and tucking into his meal as he informs Everett that the revolution was no more than an engineered ploy to reduce the crowded population of the tail to levels easier for him to manage. Wilford's status as an insidious villain of nightmarish proportions is solidified when it's revealed that he has children from the tail manually operating the dangerous machinery within the engine. It's a whole lot of evil to cram into the end of a movie, but Ed Harris manages to do so in his typically polished fashion. A film like this deserved a despicable villain of the highest order, and Harris achieves this despite only appearing briefly in the film's climactic sequence. Number 2. Colonel Curts, Apocalypse Now. Marlon Brando received top billing as Colonel Curts in Francis Ford Coppola's revered outing Apocalypse Now when the film was released in 1979. Despite this, the legendary actor only actually has 15 minutes of screen time throughout the entire film, finally appearing for the first time as the Vietnam War epic reaches its thunderous conclusion. After Curts breaks away from the US Army, building a cult of personality around himself in the process, Captain Benjamin Willard is assigned to terminate the rogue colonel. After a harrowing journey upriver encountering all manner of wartime horrors, the captain eventually finds himself face to face with his target in a temple so dark that one can barely make out Brando's features for large chunks of the scene. Cinema icon Brando makes the most of his brief time on screen, delivering an epic soliloquy on the intricacies of warfare. While he acknowledges Willard's right to kill him, he scolds the captain as nothing more than an errand boy in an unforgettably poignant monologue. Number 1. Private Ryan, Saving Private Ryan. The supposed focal point of Steven Spielberg's unforgettable war saga, Saving Private Ryan, is only presented to audiences just before the culminating battle sequence of the film. Tom Hanks' groups of Rangers finally find Ryan, part of what remains of a depleted unit entrusted with holding the strategically vital town of Ramel. Matt Damon's character immediately endears himself to audiences. Despite the devastating news of his brother's deaths in combat, the young soldier adamantly refuses his ticket away from the traumatic devastations of war, citing his complete unwillingness to abandon his comrades. Ryan is such a principled individual that he is unswayed even when regaled with the stories of the soldiers who died attempting to find him, despite being visibly moved. Ryan fights bravely in the battle against the overwhelming German forces, but is ultimately reduced to an almost catatonic state by the seemingly endless destruction raining down around him. Damon's exemplary performance adding an unflinching layer of authenticity to proceedings. The anguish in the actor's shocked eyes as he surveys the devastation around him following the battle, which he perceives to be as a result of his own actions, is absolutely gut-wrenching.